We've got a special edition of World Politics 2023, and we're doing it at 6 p.m. And I'm going to bring in my good friend Adam Lambarello. He's the guy that came up with this idea and all along those lines. And I think you said we had a few minutes to discuss what we think is going to be the important issue of the day and all along those lines. So I'll just take a stab at it first. And there's a lot of people that would say it's the economy, stupid. So all in that space. So I think that a lot of people will be wondering in 2024 about the economy and how good the economy is doing. A lot of people are trying to figure out about their housing situations and whether they can afford the good housing. As I had said on this show before, I talked to a gentleman that is getting TCLI funding because he is getting subsidy funding because he's dealing with mental health and mental depression and all along those lines. So he is paying somewhere in the neighborhood of 225 or 250 according to what he told me, because he's given a break and a subsidy to live in some apartments here in Durham, North Carolina, that usually would cost about $8,000 or $1,500 and all along those lines. But because of his health situations and because of what's going on in the mental health, they are definitely providing him with an opportunity to get housing at a lower rate. Like I said, it's about 225, which is cheap no matter where you live and everything along those lines. I think he's also getting food stamps, and I think he told me that he's paying somewhere like $150 to $200 a month in that area as well. But that figure might not be exactly right, but I do know that he is on food stamps, and a number of people will be trying to figure out about housing, about the price of gas, about just the economy in general, and whether this is going to play into 2024 and even the election. Because I know that in past shows you've talked about how wonderful Mr. Trump did in the economy and all in that space. So I do think that one of the number one issues that people would be paying attention to is what is hitting their pocketbooks and all along those lines. Because the pocketbook issues are oftentimes what people are more concerned about. They want to know, one, if they're getting paid enough, and if they're not getting paid enough, how they can get more money. That was the whole concept around the fight for 15, where people wanted $15 an hour, even in McDonald's work and all along those lines. So there was definitely going to be a push to make sure that we are able to survive on whatever we are being paid and all in that space. Because there have been some cases where the minimum wage, and I've said this on some shows, has been stuck on stupid, because I don't think that it has been a raise in the minimum wage for a number of years here in the United States and all along those lines. And there are even entire companies that haven't had cost of living increases. I know that there have been a couple of companies that I've worked for that have recently had cost of living increases, but that is not always the case. So that is something that a lot of people will be thinking about, is this whole notion of the economy and what we can do about the economy and all in that space. So like I said, I won't even need the full 10 minutes, because it's just going to be the economy and all along those lines. So I think that that's where a lot of people's mindsets will be and all in that space. So I'll actually get mine done in about 4 minutes or something along those lines, maybe 5, and all in that space. But I do think that a lot of people will be wondering about the economy and how to make the economy an important issue. So we're going to talk about issues, and we each get, I guess, 5-10 minutes to speak our piece. I'm thinking that the economy is what a lot of people are going to be concerned about. So I don't know if Kim was founder of the network, or you, Adam, that came up with this idea, or others agree with me, but I do think a lot of people are going to be wondering about what's in their wallet, what's in their pocketbook, what's in whatever form of situations that they use to hold their money. For example, I know for a fact, because I've heard it through the grapevine, that Jacoby keeps his money in his mattress and all along those lines. But I won't say which mattress it is, because then people might try to find said mattress. But definitely I've heard that Jacoby keeps his money in the mattress and all in that space. So it doesn't matter where you keep it. Jacoby's got his in the mattress. And I think the economy is going to be the number one issue.
Yeah, okay. So to understand how this new panel talk will work, you got about 5 minutes to talk, and each member, or if nobody has any questions, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to put in a suggestion or a question.
So, Adam, I give you my 5 minutes. Am I on to something? Is it the economy before we get to anybody else and their 5 or 10 minutes? But yeah, I was just going to go with the economy, and I think the economy is going to be what a lot of people are thinking about in 2024, particularly with the rising cost of some goods as well. But are we thinking that the economy is going to be an important issue in 2024?
Yes, the economy will always be an important issue. As Bill Clinton said in 1992, it's the economy's stupid. But the problems go much deeper than that. It's been a really bad year for the United States. The United States is divided, and the biggest threat to the United States is from within, not from without. And there's a lot of things that have happened that have led to this current condition. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, number one. We all believe in diversity. We're all against racism. We all want people to have equal opportunities. But diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives have vilified white people, have accused white people of all being privileged, and that's caused us to be divided on the basis of race rather than united. Diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are not good for this country, they're not good for universities, and it's becoming apparent now. Second thing is identity politics. We seem to like to divvy up people based on race or sexual orientation or ethnicity. If you're white, you're privileged. If you're black, you're oppressed. If you're gay, you're oppressed, you're marginalized. We've stopped looking at people as individuals, and we've started ascribing characteristics based on their membership in a group. And that's precisely what leads to the racism that this country thankfully eradicated years ago, and it's wrong. We need to start looking at the content of people's character, not the color of their skin. We've also seen in this country political persecution. Regardless of what you think of Donald Trump, the law has been used as a weapon to try to keep him out of the 2024 election. The Colorado Supreme Court's decision is the latest example of absolutely atrocious maneuvers by those with whom he disagrees to actually marginalize him and marginalize the voice of his supporters. The indictments against Donald Trump, they are so flimsy that it bespeaks not only the weakness of the cases, but the nefarious motives of those who are trying to prosecute him. That's wrong. You may disagree with Trump, you may not like Trump, but Trump deserves a voice and Trump deserves an opportunity to become the next president, just like Joe Biden does and any other candidate does. The next thing that's been very problematic is universities going woke. And you saw that before Congress just a few weeks ago when Elise Stefanik asked Claudine Gay and the presidents of MIT and the University of Pennsylvania, is it a violation of your conduct code to call for the genocide of Jews? And they could not answer the question directly. That is a disgrace, and it comes from the very woke administrators that claim to be for equity and inclusion, but yet couldn't condemn calling for the genocide of Jews. It's disgusting, and our universities have become so liberal and so discriminatory towards conservatives that what students are learning is not how to think. They're being told what to think. They're being indoctrinated, and they're not getting the real world skills that are necessary to be successful in life. There's been no respect for political differences. People are so sensitive and so divisive. This country is based on diversity, and that means diversity of opinion. But that's not happening anymore. We have become so divisive and so disrespectful of other people's viewpoints that our country essentially has devolved into identity politics and into a regime where free expression and respect for liberty and difference has been relegated to the back of the proverbial bus. The Me Too movement has gotten so out of hand that now men are being, like myself, have been subject to false allegations, because anytime a woman makes an allegation, it's construed as true. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, the trauma and the horror that it is to go through such a process where everything that a woman says is construed as true and your reputation is tarnished, even though the allegations made against you are defamatory. It's been weaponized against men, and it's wrong. The Supreme Court has become far too political. The Supreme Court should have never overturned Roe versus Wade. The Supreme Court only overturned Roe versus Wade because there were more conservatives on the court than liberals. That was wrong. Brett Kavanaugh was wrong. Samuel Alito was wrong. Okay? Clarence Thomas was wrong. Amy Coney Barrett was wrong. That contributed to the politicization of the judiciary, and that's something that destroys faith in the legitimacy of our institutions. So how do we get better? We have to start really embracing diversity, and what that means is respecting diversity of viewpoints. We have to start uniting around common values. And until that happens, it's going to be another bad year, and we're going to see more of the same. And that's terribly unfortunate, both for the present and the future of this country.
Are you finished?
I am.
Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, Rick.
I want to respond to two of those points. So Trump has 91 indictments against him. Now, being a DA or a prosecuting attorney is a political job, and you can lose your job if you lose a big case. These experienced prosecutors don't like bringing cases unless they think they have a 90% chance of winning on at least one of the counts. So I would bet that you've got 4 different teams prosecuting Trump in 4 different venues. I would guess that they think they have strong enough cases that Trump will almost certainly be convicted on at least one of the counts in each of the venues. So I'd say that, I'm no lawyer, but I'd say just based on the behavior of the prosecutorial system, that it's likely Trump will be found guilty of some stuff. That's thing one. Thing two is with diversity and universities. The Supreme Court threw out, like giving extra points for race in admissions. And I can tell you the main problem with admissions isn't not enough Asians, not enough whites, not enough this or that getting in. The trouble is that there are too many qualified students for the slots available. Cornell is the easiest Ivy to get into because they let in 5,000 students. Like Harvard, Princeton, Yale let in less than 2,000. So 5,000 students admitted to Cornell, but 68,000 students applied last year. So they have a 7% admit rate. Harvard, Yale, Princeton have a less than 4% admit rate. And with rates that low, zillions of perfectly qualified students are going to not get in, regardless of their racial characteristics or their SAT scores. There are just not enough spots.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Well, Rick, the first thing I'd say is prosecutors have too much power, and that has contributed to mass incarceration, and it has contributed to the unequal administration of justice. So your argument that prosecutors only charge what they think they can win, well, that highlights the problem is that they have this unchecked power that has resulted in injustices in a variety of contexts. Now, the indictments in this matter, 3 of the 4 indictments were brought by prosecutors in counties where juries will be uniformly liberal and they're likely to get a prosecution. I refer you to New York, for example. Take one look at the judge in Trump's trial in New York. Take a look at Fulton County, Georgia. Okay? Take a look at Washington, D.C. They are bringing these cases because they think they can win them because they have people with the same ideology as them on their side. And they're doing it for what motive? To hold Trump, quote unquote, accountable? No, to keep him out of the election. They're using the law to interfere with the political and electoral process. That's why you see RICO being used for the first time, unprecedented, in Fulton County for a purpose that it was never intended. That's why you see Jack Smith doing what he's doing. And what's going to happen ultimately is you're going to see more of the same, like the Colorado Supreme Court, which had such an untenable interpretation of the 14th Amendment that it led to them concluding that Trump should be off the ballot. The motive is clear. They are letting their ideology, not the law, dictate their decisions. And that is a prescription for divisiveness and the ultimate destruction of the rule of law. Now, as far as universities and affirmative action go, the truth of the matter is, in many cases, race is the only factor that universities rely upon in admitting students and in hiring faculty. As a member of the hiring committee at 2 schools, I know this for a fact, and others would attest to this. We're supposed to get beyond race. We're supposed to get beyond categorizing people based on their race, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation. And I would point you to the fact that affirmative action programs hurt the very people they're designed to help because it leads to what's called mismatch. In other words, people who are not qualified being put in classes and universities with people who are more qualified, regardless of whether you're white or black. That hurts them because it leads them to graduate in the bottom of their class and reduces their employment opportunities. Affirmative action was a disaster, and the Supreme Court rightly struck it down.
Hey, Adam, a couple of quick questions for you and everything. One is, you said that Miss Gay, who I think had some ties to Duke, did not answer the question. It is my understanding that she did actually answer the question and did say that that would go against the code of ethics and everything. And I brought that up on a past show, and I actually brought up the quote that she said, and all along those lines. So she did actually answer the question, even though.
Who are you referring to?
The lady from Harvard, who was also
the lady from Harvard is Claudine Gay, and she should resign immediately. She has plagiarized other authors. She has been cited for numerous violations of doing so. She didn't answer the question directly. She should let the University of Pennsylvania's president resign. It highlights what has happened at our universities, where they're trying to indoctrinate students and tell them what to think and not teach them the real world skills, namely how to think. She should resign immediately.
But Adam, just really quickly, I think she did answer the question, but we can get into a tit for tat for that. But you also mentioned the educational opportunity programs and affirmative action. And all along those lines, as I have said before, I went to the prestigious University of Marquette. I got there because of an EOP program, which is actually educational opportunity program, which is for people that were of a certain minority or a certain fiscal background as well. So we did not have a number of financial wherewithal to go to that prestigious university. And because of that, me and several other students, including my roommate from Yonkers, got to go to that prestigious university. And he is actually working and has worked in the past for Wisconsin government as a state employee, and a number of other people who got through that program and were very successful because of that program in the 80s. So as a product of an affirmative action program, I will actually argue against this notion that it is always a bad thing, and all along those lines. And the question for you and everything, hold on a second, the question for you that I was going to ask, and then we got other people that are going to get their 5 or 10 minutes as well, is, do you think that institutional racism does not exist when there are literally cases of people that have been turned down because of their race in certain environments, in certain communities, at certain banks, at certain other things, including the judicial system, which you are part of as well? So you're telling me that in 2023, about to be 2024, institutional racism does not exist?
You're absolutely correct. Institutional racism does not exist today, okay? Institutional racism did exist, and we took many steps to eradicate institutional racism. And the affirmative action that you're speaking of is socioeconomic. You are talking about giving opportunities to poor people.
We're going to wrap up with Sasha asking his question. We're going to wrap this 10 minutes with Sasha asking his question, and then we'll get to the next person.
Very quickly, I agree, Adam, with many points that you made. I wanted some clarity on, for example, you talked about economic issues. Of course, previously, many years ago, the economy was much stronger, much better run. Remember the wonderful Trump University, Trump Airlines, Trump casinos. Of course, there was a lot of action, a lot of excitement. No more. So now everything is dull, unexciting, and is not running properly. Now, the only question that I have, when you were talking about oppressed and oppressors, I would like to clarify how you view, especially with the rise of anti-Semitism, how you view Jews in America. Are they oppressed? Are they oppressors, or both?
Neither. I don't believe in dividing people into categories of oppressed and oppressors. And I believe when you instill in young people that victim mindset, you are crippling them for life. What we need to be teaching our students is that everybody, regardless of race or ethnicity, has obstacles they have to overcome and injustices that they have to face. They have to have the mindset to learn how to deal with that. And it begins with the family. We have had a proliferation for whites and blacks of single parent families. That leads to delinquency. It leads to worse outcomes. We need to start addressing the cultural issues that lie at the root of the degradation of our society and our young people, rather than looking at things superficially on the basis of race or artificial categories like oppressed and oppressor.
Very good. And
very
thank
much.
you for that. All right. So who's next? Mark, who's next up on the block?
Either Jacoby or Rick. So we're going to go to a more liberal person, then we'll go to Sasha. So which one of you want to take it? Jacoby?
I'm no
I'll
longer
go.
a liberal
All right,
person.
we'll give it to Rick, and then
All right, I'm going to talk about AI, which is the end of the world, but not quite yet. I think Sasha can confirm that there's just a ton of irrational exuberance in the market right now about AI. It's just AI this, AI that, and AI has already caused a lot of, and just accelerating tech has caused a lot of displacement and disruption in America already. I would say that the 2016 election, a lot of the anger and resentment that people felt was the unacknowledged product of increasing tech causing job losses and pissing people off. And dumb AI helped make people angrier during 2016 by messaging. But the people got targeted messaging via things like Cambridge Analytica from Russia, all designed to increase polarization, piss everybody off. But in the last year and a half or so, AI has made a big splash with ChatGPT, with DALL-E, where I think Grok, which is Elon Musk's extension to Twitter, where you can just tell Grok, I haven't tried it, but say, draw me a picture of a bunch of Russian grandmas throwing eggs at each other so I can put it in a tweet, and it'll give you within 2 seconds a very painterly picture. I saw this picture of Russian ladies having an egg fight. So it looks very impressive and also kind of scary. But I read Cory Doctorow, who's an expert on the future. He thinks that AI is in a bubble, that when you ask Twitter to paint a picture for you, or when you go to ChatGPT, you're really using a little toy model of AI that really isn't that powerful or sophisticated, and that the big AIs that could actually change the world cost billions of dollars to develop, because you have to pay tens of thousands of people in poor countries to do the work, to process the information so that it can be put into a large AI model. And Doctorow thinks that the billions of dollars that this costs can't easily be or quickly be recouped, and that the bubble is going to pop the same way the dot-com bubble popped in 2000 and the mortgage bubble popped in 2007. But of course, after the bubble popped, we do now all live on the internet. So the dot-com thing came true, but 10 years later, after bankrupting a bunch of people in the year 2000. So AI may may cause a bunch of people to lose a bunch of money. It may add another couple of years before it gets really smart. But I expect after the crash that it will rise up again and just tear up the world like crazy. That AIs will become our personal assistants, our concierges, our consciences, our bodyguards, our doctors, our girlfriends and boyfriends. And they'll become extensions of our mind. And Dr. Oak says that the world will be run by reverse centaurs, which are, now this isn't 2024, this is like 2032, 2040, that the people who, like a centaur is half man, half horse, and the people who join with AI, when AI gets smart, who learn how to use it most intimately and effectively, will be the new, people who run the world. So things are going to get weird. Things are already weird, but we may get a break from the weirdness if there's a crash, but then things just get super weird. AI is just going to bring us endless entertainment. It will extend our lives. If you like the show Friends, I think you can already go to some website and just say, give me a new episode of Friends, and it'll give you a little screenplay, a script written by AI of a whole new episode of Friends. And in the future, you'll be able to get that, but with the actual images of the actual stars. And you'll be able to take any movie, from any era, and AI can turn it into a kung fu movie. Can turn it into a porno movie. We'll just be endlessly entertained. I follow a bunch of people on Twitter who think that right now they measure COVID most effectively, since nobody likes to test anymore, by the amount of COVID in poo water, sewer water. They take a sample and they see how many virus particles are in there. And right now the COVID levels, according to poo water, are the second highest in history. And the people I follow, who are the people who are still freaking out about COVID, say that 1/3 of Americans may get COVID during this winter wave. And those same people are saying that getting COVID, especially repeatedly, accelerates Alzheimer's, and that we're going to get a huge wave of people, tens of millions more people with Alzheimer's in the next few decades. And those people, as they begin to lose their mental faculties, are going to need AI assistance to help them get through life. And all right, so AI will, in a weird, horrible way, will also save the world, because AI will bring extended lifespans, much more entertainment, as I've said. People are already having, young people in their 20s and teens are already having 25% less sex than people in their teens and 20s had in the 70s, because there's so much more stuff to do. The 70s sucked for everything except for getting laid, if you were lucky enough to get laid, which I wasn't. But now there's so much amazing entertainment that people are just like ignoring sex. That trend will continue into the future. People will live, tens of millions of Americans, more than that, increasing numbers, will live most of their lives online, as if they're in the Matrix, where they're plugged into virtual reality, living in, I'm writing a novel about all this junk. I call the apartments that they'll live in racks, where it's just like, it's a grubby little, studio apartment with just a bed, basically, and a bathroom and a hot plate, and you're in virtual reality, 14 hours a day. Somebody comes in to check on you to make sure you haven't died on your rack. And so as this kicks in, as AI gets more pervasive, we'll be having less kids, and which will lead to, by the end of the 21st century, a decline in population, which will help save us from climate change and the other consequences of having, 10 billion humans on Earth. Let's see if I hit every single point here. Yeah, that's enough of that. Okay, one more thing. Right now it's capitalism versus communism. I believe in the future, commutism will replace both to an increasing extent. That running AI is incredibly expensive in terms of power consumption and other resources. And the economic competition of the future will increasingly revolve around information processing. And many of the necessities of life will become increasingly cheap: food, clothing, shelter. Okay, that's it.
That is awesome. Yes, Sasha, what is your question for Rick?
My question is very simple. When you and Adam are talking about sex and the problem with sex or without sex, I don't know what's a bigger problem. I would suggest something. I don't know if you would agree with that each city and even some large villages would have a special sex zone where only people who mind to have sex would attend those zones. People who don't need sex or don't want to have sex, they should not allowed even to enter that zones. What some affordable hotels, restaurants, or so on What do you think about this idea?
I think that we're going to see lots of things like that. I mean, cities like Amsterdam have a red light district where you can just walk down the street and shop for prostitutes in store windows. And I believe that people will, in the future, tend to segregate themselves by the amount of tolerance they have for technology. You know, today we have Amish, we have Mennonites who have stepped away from much of the technology of the world. In the future, things are going to get really weird, and people will have different levels of acceptance of technological weirdness, and they may segregate themselves by that level of acceptance.
That's very good.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions? All right. Hello. We're bringing the panel back in. And who's next on the block? I think we're going to give it to Sasha. Sasha, what's your 10 minutes?
Okay, I'll do very simple. Of course, I would need Adam's input because he's an expert on the issue and very knowledgeable one. It's very interesting how the history repeats itself. Ronald Reagan was instrumental in demolishing the Soviet Union, which fell apart exactly in 1991. It was already Bush Sr. who was the president at the time, but all the work, all the preparation, the point to call USSR an evil empire, that's all was developed, all the doctrine was developed by Reagan, and essentially he just became very focused on that time where he has done that, but there is nothing new in U.S. doctrine, which was basically unchanged since 1945, and there was deterrence of Russia and so on. So basically, he didn't do anything drastically new, but it was very effective what he's done. Now, the major point why USSR fell apart was its 10 years war in Afghanistan. The rather weak country, which doesn't have even proper nationality, because there are some tribes who actually live in that country fighting each other and so on. I'm talking about Pashtuns, Tajiks, Uzbeks, and they're all Muslims, but they're all fighting among themselves. And what's happened is that around mid-80s, US started incredibly helping military-wise to Afghanistan fighters. They started to bring enormous amount of javelins and what's the name, strikers and some other ammunition that were essentially very effective against Russian helicopters and tanks and military vehicles and so on. And Russia couldn't do much about that. Think about it. Now, history repeats itself. Now it's 2022, 23, almost 24. It's almost 2 years since Russia started its invasion of Ukraine. Remember, Russia started invasion of Afghanistan in 1980. Okay, now it's 2022. It started its invasion of Ukraine. Now, let's compare for a second. Russia versus USSR. USSR was much bigger, much richer country than today's Russia, and they had the Warsaw Bloc countries, which always would support it. What's today's Russia? Nobody supports it. Not a single country supports Russia at all in the world. It's much weaker than USSR. People are not motivated to fight. There are a lot of people who are trying to desert the armed forces or so on. And Ukraine, believe it or not, it's not Afghanistan. It's a completely different animal. It's a different civilization. It's a different people, different their technological prowess is second to maybe to Western countries or so on, but there, if you remember, or maybe you don't, but I do, that all weapons, 100% of weapons, of missiles, of the nuclear arms, they were all produced in Ukraine. Even today, in spite of the war with Ukraine, they're bringing Ukrainians to manage all the silos with missiles inside them, and all this nuclear technologies, because Russians have no idea what it's all about. So we are witnessing now that Russia is being crushed again, but this time not by Donald Reagan. It's done by US very skillfully. They're playing all the spectacle about, oh, well, we cannot help Ukraine because we have to solve their southern borders or so. Today, I see that first 16 F-16 fighters are already being delivered to Ukraine. So let's figure out, they're making fools of Russians. They're destruct them very skillfully. They, first of all, they put all the sanctions. They cannot produce anything. They cannot even find replacement parts for their aviation, which is using exclusively Boeing and Airbus, and there are no spare parts anymore. So what they're taking a plane which is in service, and they just take it apart to have a spare parts. So they're cannibalizing their fleet. I hope, Adam, by the time that you will go to Russia, they will have still left some fleet, so you could at least fly from maybe Moscow to somewhere. St. Petersburg would be a good idea. Yeah, you will behave properly, and you will come back in one piece, hopefully, and it would be great. We will celebrate, of course, that. I don't know. So is your mother, who is planning to go to the trip. So the only thing what might be on its way to completely demolish Russia, it could be our friend Donald Trump. Of course, Donald Trump, being Putin's puppy, he will do everything possible and impossible to help his friend. Such things as, for example, to completely take US out of NATO, and then disband NATO forever. And then he will start to press Ukraine to accept the peace deal with Russia, whatever it might be. But I don't think that Russia will be still a valid entity by the time Trump, if and when, will become president. Maybe he's not going to be a president in 2024. Maybe he'll win 2028. So we'll see. So Putin has to fight for another 5 years in that scenario. So let's enjoy ourselves and see how Ukraine skillfully demolish Russia with help from NATO and United States. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, here we go. Thank you, Sasha. That was very well stated. I appreciate that. To bring up the international affairs and how we are involving ourselves in supporting the different aspects of the war, I think that it's very important that we keep abreast of what's happening, and that's good to hear that we're sending some support. Does anyone have questions for Sasha?
Sasha, just two things. Number one,
Sasha, how do you have any friends and all along those lines? Go ahead, Adam.
Oh, I was just going to ask Sasha, what do you think the United States can do to improve its relationship with Russia? And as far as Russia goes, on this show, I'm going to invite Jatovi to join my mother and I on our trip to Russia. I think it'll be a constructive thing, and I hope he agrees to do that. What do you think, Sasha?
How constructive it could be improving relationship with the dying country? Why would you do that? I mean, you can attend the funerals and pay all the due respect and so on, but improving relations. Let me ask you, you could talk about improving relations probably in maybe some 90s, the end of 90s before Putin. So there was a drunk by the name Yeltsin who was in power. And, and you can improve relations by bringing him boxes of vodka, and that would do. Now, when Putin was okay for first couple of years, but then it's all changed, of course, by 2007, his Munich speech, where he was talking about in great details about the West and the US and how Russia will be vindictive and will punish the West and the United States about disrespect to Russia. What that fool is talking about. By that time, Russia was already a member of World Trade Organization. The big, large seven most developed economies, they accepted Russia, although it was not even close to that, but they accepted Russia as a full member. And they started to call, instead of G7, they started to call it G8. So what kind of respect you still wanted, you fool?
All right, let's give Rick a turn, and then we need to wrap this session
Right.
and give it
So,
to
yeah,
Joe.
question for Sasha. I've read that what helped bring down the Soviet Union was Star Wars in the late 80s and early 90s. That Star Wars was our system that was supposed to be able to knock Soviet nuclear missiles out of the air, which didn't really work back then, but it led to Russia, the Soviet Union, spending a ton of money trying to overcome that, which helped bankrupt them. And so my question is, we're probably spending less helping Ukraine now than we spent on weapon systems to bankrupt the Soviets then, right?
Yes and no. I'll tell you why. Because obviously the Star Wars project, it was a brainchild of Reagan and his advisors. There was no way that they could do something really in the next probably 20 years, maybe even longer. However, the Russian military advisors, when they really took it very seriously, and they advised then Gorbachev that there is no money available and no technology available at that time in Russia to match that project. This is the end. You have to just give up and forget about fighting this project, or try to send the nukes on the United States before they developed it. Okay, because if they will develop it, you won't even be able to say nukes; they will be all destroyed. Okay, and now with Ukraine, it's a goal, maybe not stated, but it's a goal of the West and United States to disable Russia. So for the next 50, maybe 100 years, they will never be in a position to start any threats or any attacks against anybody, not just Ukraine or any other countries, but nobody.
Well, and I understand that we've been sending missiles at someone else on Christmas Day. I'm sure we'll call it the Christmas Day Massacre. But so that's this round, and I think it was a very impactful round about our international support of war. So let's give this hand to Jacoby now and see what Jacoby has to say about what topics he's interested in and what's impacting our 2024 elections.
I'll be brief and quick because I like it I will try and open the floor up for more debate and discussion around it, because everything interests me. From every topic that everybody brought up, from talking at DEI, which I wanted to push back big about that, talking about AI. Honestly, Rick, AI, the canary in the coal mine with AI really wasn't movies and the Terminator. It was actually video games. because that's where AI is coming out of, and the pushing back and all that. So all discussions I enjoy, but I think or all topics I enjoy, but I think the issue that will hound us the most next year, going into 2024, which it's not DEI that's the downfall of our nation or that's tearing us apart. It's not single parent homes. It's not that. It's the truth and being honest with one another and being able to talk. Actually, it was Fareed Zakaria did a piece about the First Amendment and being able to speak. And take, for example, if we go back to what those the four women who were the head of the colleges, ironically, it had to be four women up there that the people are so mad about, we have to be honest. A lot of the anger and angst was, one, they were women in charge. That's being honest. We have to be able to acknowledge that. Going after the individual who, oh, well, she plagiarized. The reason they're going after her, not only is she a woman, but she's a Black woman. So we have to be able to be honest with each other, which we've lost that. And we seem to be veering so far away from that. When we conveniently try and state our particular points, but forgetting the facts that, hey, what Trump is saying is a lie. We can't say that anymore because we're afraid that, okay, this party here will get mad at us. We can't say no president is above the law. We can't even have that debate now because the Supreme Court justices the justices who found Trump and took him off that actual ballot in Colorado. Yes, that decision was done, but we can't be honest about it because guess what? Those justices are now receiving death threats. Again, our downfall, it has nothing to do with all this extra stuff that we want to sit there and put out there. It's about the fact that we can't even be honest because we've got to play to our political board, and we've got to cheer on our team, and we forget that we are all supposedly in this together. If we're all on the same team, shouldn't we be fighting for what's best for everybody and not just what's best for the GOP or the Democrat Party or the conservatives or the MAGA wing or the libertarians or the progressives or the liberals? It should be about what is best for the country and not just sitting here arguing that, hey, Trump is above the law. He shouldn't be prosecuted. Oh, well, they're using it as a weapon when we should be going after Biden for something he didn't do in office and wasn't even close to being in office. We can't be honest anymore. So again, my point is, 2024, until we can be honest, until we can actually have a discussion truthfully about race, we're still always going to have race issues. DEI isn't a push to make white people feel bad. DEI is about actually providing opportunity for those individuals who never really had that opportunity or barely ever get that opportunity. We can't be honest about what's going on in Israel, what's going on with the Palestinian people. We can't say these things because it triggers something and we got to cheer on our side. So again, my whole thing is honesty. Let's just be honest about the situation and stop making stuff up.
That's pretty impactful because we haven't been able to be honest without being judged and persecuted for being honest. We've lost our morals and integrity. So it's a very good, heavy statement. Yes, Rick, how would you like to address this with Jacoby?
So white supremacy isn't about whites being better than other races. It's about white people who suck protecting their position against equally or better qualified people of all types. If you don't suck, then you're not so worried about diversity policies. And to bring up AI again, when distinguishing truth from bullshit, AI makes that harder, along with the Russian fire hose of misinformation that's targeted to you via AI based on what your phone overhears you saying. So distinguishing truth from bullshit becomes increasingly difficult.
And even to touch on to that even more, Rick, you know, at the beginning of the Israel and the war that's going on in Israel right now, people put out pictures of video game footage utilizing AI to say this is what's going on. That's a problem, and that's coming. And we can't be, again, AI, we can't even be honest about AI because people want to gonna push it off to the side. Because
not just video game footage, but footage from other wars.
Yep.
You know, just
there were other war footages, everything. But Jacoby, just really quickly, one of the things I was curious about, and you kind of alluded to it, but I just love to hear your thoughts about it. But if we're going to be honest and we're going to be truthful, and we got to be truthful about some of our own wars and things that have happened in our system as well. Because while we talk about Russia and we talk about a number of other repressive governments in the world, let's be honest, there are political prisoners here in the United States, and we don't even want to have that conversation, even though they literally exist here in the United States. There are AIM members, Black Panther members, and others that are literally political prisoners, whether we want to admit that or not.
Yeah. And there's political prisoners, there's institutionalized racism is still around. Systemic racism is still around. Heck, you can read, if anybody's into the Constitution, let's talk about the 13th Amendment, which is actually a new form of slavery, which actually forces prisoners. And remember, we do have for-profit prisons, and that is one of our biggest industries in the U.S. Well, that keeps prisoners in jail where they actually have to work for nickels on the dollar just to create things that we use every day, and they barely get paid. So therefore, again, we're not even honest about those things. So we like to hide in the shadows and, hey, let's not talk about the bad things. Hey, this is all so great. No, we just got to start to be honest about things until we can
honesty. So honesty, according to Jacoby, what he believes is honest. So let's remember that those 4 women who were before Congress were presidents of some of the most elite institutions in this country. So much for institutionalized sexism. And the reason that Claudine Gay was...
Let's stop right there. You're not being honest by dropping in, let's talk about it. How is that sexist because you have a woman in power?
No, what I'm saying is that the fact that 4 women are in power is a good thing, and it shows you.
No, Adam.
And the second thing is that
this is back
Claudine.
To being honest. If you're
going to interrupt me, then I'm not going to have a discussion with you.
Hold on. You dropped in a nugget of joy in the middle of saying something.
I hope the audience sees what's going on here.
You already dropped in saying that it's sexist for a woman to be in power, or those 4 women.
I did not say that at all. You are so full of shit when you say that. That is bullshit. And I don't care. No, that's not true.
Just really quickly.
So you call me racist next? Pull out all the cards, right? I'm a racist.
That's what you said.
I got a question for both of you. It's basically based on something that Rick was talking about earlier.
You are accusing Congress of, and people who have said Claudine Gay plagiarized, you're assuming the motive is because she was a Black woman. No, that is a crock of shit. She is being accused of that because she's the Harvard president, and we expect them not to engage in that behavior. Now, I respect your views, but your views are honest. Your views are the farthest thing from honest. And Claudine Gay, dare I say, was probably hired in part because of her race. I've been on hiring committees, and I've been directed to only hire a Black person. I'm the racist.
Hold on.
I don't think that there's much.
Say that she was hired because she was a Black woman.
I didn't say that.
You just literally said that.
I said in part because of her race.
So again, this is what I'm talking about being honest. And this is why we can't have that conversation, is because you're unwilling to be honest. You literally stated the fact that part of the reason she was hired was because she was a Black woman. You literally
stop putting words into my mouth. That is
You
not
just said
fair.
that.
That's
I
exactly
feel
what we're
like
doing.
the biggest,
It's an
the
obvious debate
biggest
tactic,
issues
and I'll let
are
the audience decide.
Well, and I believe that some of the biggest issues that we have in our society are the diversions and the prejudice. And everyone feels like they're walking on glass right now whenever they're talking about it. And I believe when Jatovi says the honesty factor, I believe a lot of people can't even be honest anymore, because the minute you say something to help, immediately you're judged. I think we need to step
Yeah,
back
just
a
like
little
I was
bit.
just judged and called a
Well,
sexist.
I
Thank
think
you.
we need to step back a little bit as a society, take our feelings off our sleeves and be realistic and listen and learn. There's so much to be learned about why. Why do these things happen? Why are so many people being fired over doing something that they're being accused of being anti-Semitic? I don't know. I don't know why they're stepping down and being accused of these things. I don't know why there's even this problem. Why do we even have this problem in a society today? And maybe we should just hand it over to AI and let AI sort it out for us, because apparently we don't know how. But I believe that we hit the big topics very well. And I want to add to the economic situation. I just listened to one of the last meetings of the Federal Reserve today. And I find it ironic that they keep talking about two things that just drive me insane. And one of them is, inflation is going up and unemployment is down, and there's plenty of jobs out there. I don't believe that there's plenty of jobs out there, because there wouldn't be people begging on the streets at the inflated rate that they are right now, or they're just not taking the job, or we're not doing the process right. And Mark knows what I'm talking about with the process right. But we've got a lot of things, big topics that should impact our 2024 election. And this has just been the most educational, informational session I have had this year, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, Rick.
I just want to, it's crazy that humans have been genetically identical for roughly 100,000 years. And it's crazy what it makes sense that we are crazy, because we're trying to use the brains that we evolved out on the savannas, like trying to bring down animals for food and figure out which berries are poisonous or not, to understand the onslaught of the flood, the avalanche of information that hits us every waking moment now. And it's tough, because culture, civilization has evolved past the point of our ability for it not to make us crazy. So yeah, we probably do need AIs on our shoulder to whisper in our ear to keep us sane and making good decisions.
Hey, Rick, I know we're winding down,
That's
but I have some good news for Adam and for myself, because I'm one of those people in the elderly or middle age range that is in that same category that Adam is in and everything. But I just learned, as I was looking up some news, that apparently the daters of the world are feeling that at first they were feeling that the current state of dating was hopeless and they were sharing their horror stories, but now expectations are changing and many singles are already taking steps toward creating better dating lives, maybe even using that AI, because apparently there was a term called "it" that was very popular in the UK and everything in 2023. And it was popularized doing a show called Love Island. But now people are talking about red flags and situationship and a number of other things. So maybe there is hope for those that are not attached, like Sasha and Jatovi are in that lane. So maybe there's hope for those that are looking for love in the air, because apparently single people are ready to leave X and red flags behind in 2024, and maybe there's going to be hope for.
I have a theory about this, that
Yes.
in the 70s you had to be hot to hook up, but now 50 years later there's a cornucopia of pornography out there. Everybody's head is stuffed with it. Everybody has a spank bank, so they don't need their partner to be as perfectly hot as somebody in the 70s. Plus, since we're having less sex, You don't even need to have that much sex with your partner. You just need somebody to watch TV with. So yeah, there are lower barriers to
That's
hooking up
disgusting.
now.
Pornography should be outlawed. It corrupts our youth.
How
I
are
think
you going
it
to
should be,
stop it? We're ankle deep in it.
Well,
Yeah, how you
here's the
gonna say-
thing. I think that
Well,
all of
before we get
those
knee deep in it, we have to
pictures
eliminate it.
were made so perfect that it made men want 100% Stedford wife model perfect women, and we're not. Okay, we don't look like that every day. We don't want to look like that every day, and we do just kind of want to sit down and watch TV every once in a while, but we're too busy cleaning and trying to look good. But I don't think that that's going to be the big topics. It could
No,
be.
that's not going to be the big topic. But I do have
That could
one
be
final
the big
quick question
topic.
for. I did have
But-
one final quick question for Jacoby, because it was
Successful
something I was
people
going to
keep
jump
their
into
clothes on.
and everything, and it was about AI and everything. But Elon Musk and some of these rich people can afford to go to space if the world is going to hell in a handbasket and everything. But so, is there a future for us minorities in space? And this is for Sasha and Rick, because usually when I look at science fiction, with the exception of Cisco on Deep Space Nine and a couple of other characters, there weren't that many of us in space and everything. So is there a future for us in space, or can we even afford to go to space should we want to go to space? Because I ain't got Oprah kind of money. Maybe you might have it, Jacoby, but I ain't got
I think space is for later. The technology that we need to make space easy, which like a space elevator, that rests on technology that's 50, 100 years in the future. Also, like space is miserable. Like Mars and the moon, or the sand on the moon just eats through everything because there's no wind and it's all sharp and it gets in everything and it cuts up everything and it's just miserable. So
And
I don't know.
Mars's sand is all red.
Mark,
I mean, but
was-
here's my problem with space travel. Every time they tried to make space travel now, the ships blow up. Personally, you couldn't get me on one of those ships in this day and time. If you offered me $1 billion, you couldn't do it. It's not worth the risk, because people do not make things equality. They cut corners. Companies cut corners so that they do things more cost effectively. Yes, Jacoby.
Just to point out, the Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are outside of the solar system. And the Voyager 1 at this current moment, they said, is sending back random zeros and ones. So speaking in machine language that nobody understands right now. And that's going outside of our solar system. I forget. It's past what's called the heliopause, if I remember. So it's the two furthest man-made systems outside of our galaxy. On top of that, there's so much space junk around the Earth currently that it does make space travel a little bit more challenging because there's so much space junk floating around. But then on top of that, there is, inner space travel, which, going from planet to planet, because they're still planning on that Mars mission. There's also another mission to Uranus where they're Uranus. There's a mission to drill.
Gross.
They're going to send robots to actual Uranus and drill through the ice layer to see what's up under there. They've actually taken a picture of one of the moons next to Jupiter, which actually gives the closest view, and it shows a planet. It shows the moon where it looks like a planet, or it looks like Earth, because it has the blue, it has the actual mountainous, the greens, and everything else. But it's the closest view. They just put that out. They've also put out where there's a photo of Uranus where it shows the rings that are around it, and how that's pretty cool. I do a lot of Star Talk radio. I love my Neil deGrasse Tyson and all the other stuff.
I read everything in space, and have been to a couple of the propulsion labs for Virgin and NASA. So it's a beautiful curiosity to me, but it's an expense I think we can put to the side. Yes, Rick.
I think we should send people without legs into space. They only weigh 100 pounds. They take up less. You don't need legs in zero G. And we're making a zillion of them in Ukraine right now. So
So,
astronauts.
so
That's-
just to point out, the funny part about what's going on right now, sending no leg people in space, that's pretty hilarious. I'm 5 years old, and so I'm like, I got my 5-year-old mind going. And then even worse, we've already said ankles, knees, Uranus, and Virgin, and pornography in this whole show.
and sex.
So are we going to go into space and go in search of victims and oppressed and marginalized populations? Are we going to start categorizing people
I
on the
think
basis
before
of
we
their
do
race?
that, we need
I hope we learned our lessons
to
on Earth, or
translate
else
the
we're going to be in a lot
zeros
of
and
trouble.
ones. I think we need to translate the zeros and ones coming back and make sure it's not a recipe book like the Twilight
But
Zone.
Adam, there was some major research when we got
What are we going to say? The aliens are marginalized?
space and all along those lines, because there was definitely a number of people that were groundbreakers because they were the first in their ethnicity to go into space and everything. So there, whether you were talking about Mae Jemison,
Stop characterizing people on the basis of their race. Look at people as individuals. Otherwise, you're engaging in racism.
No, incorrect. Everything you just said right there is incorrect. The
I
problem
know,
is,
I'm sure it is.
the problem is that you are utilizing race as a tool to degrade people when we should be utilizing race and culture.
I'm using race as a tool to degrade people.
Celebrate an individual.
You can't be serious.
Differences in cultures,
And there is no response to you needed.
So therefore,
That's so
like, I enjoy talking to Sasha because I can learn about his culture, who he is, and his background. Same thing with Rick. We're different race and cultures, but I can learn and gain so much knowledge from that instead of, oh, well, he's a white dude. Which
But
is
I'm a different gender. So yes, Rick.
We should
Sylvia,
send
you
Tom
do
Cruise-
exactly what you criticize me of doing.
All
You
right,
do
we
it
should
precisely,
send
and
Tom
it's an
Cruise-
obvious debate tactic. And I think there's no need to continue this discussion.
I didn't
because-
know, Adam, you changed your
Right.
name
So
to Rick.
let's listen to Rick. What
All right,
Rick
so
do you
we
have to say?
before COVID happened, there were news stories about Tom Cruise signing a deal, making a deal to make a movie in zero G on the International Space Station. I don't know what happened to that, but I want to send Tom Cruise into space. That
He could probably
lunatic
fly
loves me.
he could probably captain the ship. The
I
guy
mean,
can fly.
want to see a movie made
everything
in
we
zero
have
G.
on
We had a little bit of zero G with Apollo 13, which they filmed on the Vomit Comet.
the vomit comment.
I'm probably gonna
And
get
you know
myself in
what?
trouble. I'm
And
probably
he
gonna get
can
myself in trouble
certainly-
from listening to this, but isn't Tom Cruise a member of Scientology as well? So there are people that might be offended by Tom Cruise being in this whole movie because of his religious beliefs. Because I think he's
And
a member of.
You'll love
I
it
think
because
we need to
Vitu's out
wrap
there.
at this point because this is a political talk show. Sasha?
A very last thing I'd like to mention about the space business. So only few really people can afford to fly to space. It's Jeff Bezos, it's Elon Musk, Tom Cruise, and
Richard
others.
Branson.
Richard Branson. Okay, so 10 people, maximum 20. Okay, does it make all the rest of us really oppressed people because we cannot fly? Same as very few people who could afford it.
Another victim.
I don't want to
Actually,
go.
I'll point this out, which actually goes into the political realm and back to where we started. And honestly, Sasha, just to point out, yes, there are very rich people that could utilize their money in other ways in terms of terraform, helping out people on the planet, but they utilize it to go to space, which honestly actually could be a good thing because right now, in terms of politics, the space race is it's one of the things that sparked a lot of the science in NASA. To start with, think about Sputnik because there was a race to space then. But right now, there's a race to space again because India just put a rover on the moon at the cheapest cost possible. So now there's a huge race to actually get back into space and to get back to Mars, to get to these other planetary areas. Because again, it's sad that the only thing that pushes that space race is politics and fear of war. That's it.
And I would like to add that until we learn to not be so dirty, filthy, and leave our trash up there, we need to stop. Because right now that trash comes down and it comes down at a velocity that will run a hole right through your body. And we've seen it happen. It's happening more and more every day. So I think what we need to learn to do first is learn not to trash a place before we go there. And that's something we've never learned. Have you ever driven around our country? We need to learn to clean up. Yes, Rick?
Interestingly enough,
Undocumented immigrants in orbit picking up space trash.
There you go.
well,
I think when you talk about
enough,
space,
there
though, when you
is-
talk,
I was just
When
going to
you
say, at the NASA rover, the actual drone that's flying on Mars, actually found where there was a crash. So it did find junk on Mars and took a photo of it. Like I said, I'm a big nerd. I love the space stuff.
And I think
when
we
we
need
talk
to
about
learn
space,
to quit being trashy. And I think we need to stop trashing the space like we trashed our world. I think we need to learn to clean up a little bit. And that is another topic. I think
Well, Kim, like we trash the ocean, which is making
that's what I'm saying. That is another whole new topic.
well, yeah, but
that
when
we
you
need
talk
to
about
make sure
space,
they're political. And I want to thank Adam for coming up with this show idea. I think it was a lot of fun and very educational. And I hope we do it again very soon. Until then, we'll see you guys Thursday on World Politics. Thank you and good night. Everyone, have a good evening. And
don't forget to shop at the bookstore.
Don't forget to shop at the bookstore. We got some great books and T-shirts and sweatshirts.